CEO confidence is slipping. That's according to a new survey from the Conference Board that shows CEOs' assessments of the economy fell, and most CEOs are expecting a slowdown. Joining us right now is former Fed Vice Chair Roger Ferguson. He's now the Vice Chairman of the Business Council and trustee of the Conference Board. He is also a CNBC contributor. And Roger, walk us through the numbers. What did you find? This is 130 CEOs who were asked about how they feel about things?
Yeah, 130 CEOs I asked, fielded late September, early October, ending October 6th. Your opening was exactly right. A slight slip in confidence. Anything in the negative territory, anything below 50 is thought to be negative. It came in at 48, last time 49. But more interesting is expectations for both hiring and CapEx crept up slightly. And so I think it's a group that's not very excited, but also not preparing for a dramatic downturn. The biggest question we asked is, what are you expecting? And roughly 64% said basically, let's call it slight stagflation. Inflation still above trend, growth probably slowing a little bit below trend. So that's sort of where they are.
That's not something that sounds like they are expecting a recession. Maybe just a slight slow?
That's exactly right. For a period of time, they were appearing to expect a recession. That fortunately did not occur. So right now, I think they're mainly in the stagnation category, so call it 64% there. 25% think they will have sort of trend growth, so they're slightly more optimistic. The biggest news ultimately is something you've been talking about, and all of us have, which is their expectations on AI. And there, a large majority expect major transformation of jobs in the next 4 or 5 years.
Major transformation of jobs, meaning fewer people being hired or people being hired in different industries?
I think a combination of things. First, in their own companies, people becoming much more productive. When I asked why they're expecting to use AI, it is for efficiency and, frankly, cost cutting. And that was roughly 52%. A number said that they're hoping to increase services. But on the jobs front, it's major transformation in jobs as we're doing them today, plus expectations of some new jobs. But what's interesting is the pace of change, over the next 4 or 5 years. It's pretty rapid change for what is people describing as fundamental changes to jobs.
One of the things I thought was really interesting is most of these CEOs are reporting having no difficulties hiring overall, and that's a change from what we'd seen. Does that suggest that there is softness in the labor market?
It's a relatively soft labor market, but not declining dramatically. And so, as Chair Powell said, we seem to be in this interesting equilibrium of low hire, low fire. Because they also aren't expecting to have major reductions in labor force either. And so I think the Fed's going to take this general notion of no hire, no fire labor market into consideration when they meet in a couple of weeks. And we heard Chair Powell again reiterate that as one of the things that he's focused on.
Roger, you're describing a scenario where it seems like wage gains would be really difficult to come by, which would be positive for inflation expectations. And I'm just wondering whether you don't think of it that way, how the dual mandates can actually affect each other. But that would, I'm not saying it's great that people aren't getting wage increases, but it seems like a very difficult labor market to see any type of wage price spiral from the tariffs, which makes me think we could start going back towards 2. There's no reason for things to stay at 3 right now, inflation-wise.
Well, a couple of good points you just made there, Joe. Yes, when we surveyed people, expectations for wage increases are roughly in the 1% to 3% category. Noticeably, fewer people were expecting bigger wage increases than that. So you're right. This looks like an economy that's not, driving dramatic increases in wages. And look, the Fed itself is taking a bet similar to the one you suggested that, inflation will gradually trend back down to 2. One also has to say that the expectations of inflation from tariffs has not proven to be, has not sorted out exactly as people had feared. And so, let's keep fingers crossed that the Fed is doing the right thing. focusing on a slightly softening labor market, moving interest rates down gradually. But they are taking, as Chair Powell would say, a risk on both sides. Not proven yet that inflation will gradually move back down. That's sort of the bet they're taking, and we'll wait and see.